Hello everyone, welcome back and thank you for joining me for White Walkers Revisited Part 2. If you haven't seen White Walkers Revisited Part 1, just click on the card here to recap, in which I speculate on the reason the White Walkers were created in the first place. With this video, I want to explore how they operate beyond just poking baby cheeks, so pull up a chair and get comfy. This is going to be another long video, and don't worry, I will talk about why the Walkers are back in the current timeline in an upcoming Part 3 video. Also, a quick note that this will be more of a discussion video just like last time on how whites work, why the White Walkers need children, and so on. So enjoy the speculation on what we might see in the Winds of Winter, and join in the comments below. Hit the bell for notifications on that upcoming White Walker playlist, and blast a like and blast a subscribe. I plan to have regular content from here on out. So now that we've found a good cause for the long night and the creation of the others in the White Walkers Revisited Part 1 video, let's speculate a little with another quote from George R.R. Martin. He compares the White Walkers to climate change, and I don't think that he is saying that they are climate change. That's a bit too obvious for me with the ice demons. I think this quote is more so that they are this massive looming threat on the horizon that everyone is ignoring. Something created with or caused by good intentions that has gotten out of control over time, built up to be something almost unstoppable. If you saw my original theory video way back in 2016, I think, I like to think of the others like gray goo. Another good comparison would be a nuclear weapons arm race, the ultimate deterrent. Even the Children of the Forest in the show say they were created to defend against mankind, and if created for defense, they may not necessarily have meant it as an offensive weapon, or at least they didn't mean for things to spiral out of control as badly as they did, but that's the way things go sometimes, isn't it? And control is definitely something I want to get into in the next video. After all, why do the Children of the Forest even need the White Walkers when they can raise the dead on their own, as we've seen with Cold Hands? Well, to find out how the White Walkers operate, I'm going to lean heavily on the prologue to A Dance with Dragons, which is about a character called Weimar Sixskins. He is a powerful warg with several animals under his control, such as wolves, a bear, and a shadow cat, giving him his title, Six Skins. In the prologue, he is wounded and about to die after the battle at the wall, and a heavy part of that chapter is his history and an internal debate about warging into another human being. He is hesitant because he has been taught that doing so is an abomination, the blackest of all sins. Still, he doesn't want to die, and so he attempts to warg into a woman that has been helping him survive, and even as powerful as he is, he struggles to take control of another human being, and he ultimately fails. Once his spirit is expelled, he ends up in a strange type of limbo where he can feel and is in the forest, the trees, the water, the owls, etc. before he ends up in one of his wolves. There are tons of important bits of information about wargs in this chapter. We learn that Sixskin stands out as powerful compared with the average warg. We learn that when a warg's host body, their original body, dies, they lose their power. Humans are apparently a struggle to warg. John is more powerful than the average warg as well, he just doesn't know it. Wargs can control more than one animal at a time. Weimar produces no sons or daughters that are wargs, very important, as this must skip a generation, or maybe it's not even genetic. But maybe the most important thing that we learn from this chapter is what happens when a warg dies. Usually they can live on in their animal in what's called a second life. However, a powerful warg can kick them out and take over, denying them a second life, as well as sharing the body. This is something Sixskin does to several other characters. For instance, when Orel dies, Weimar takes over Orel's eagle, and the three occupy it: man, eagle, and man. He also wants to take Ghost from John, which is another thing to note. Melisandre has a vision of a man, a wolf, then a man. What if that's not resurrection, but three separate individuals in the same body? You can click on the card to see my Jon Snow video where I talk a little bit about that. And at any rate, thanks to the prologue, we know that human wargs don't die, but their spirits can live on in nature. This is very similar, if not exactly, as the Children of the Forest do when they die. So this could explain how the White Walkers raise their whites. Is it why the Walkers bring the cold? Not just their magic or what they are, but that they are somehow having control of these souls of the dead in the literal clouds and in the snow. The Night King simply raises his hand and animates wights, and we see similarly that wights in the book can be brought back with no apparent cause, such as in the first book of Game of Thrones at the wall. No kiss is needed, like with the Red Priests, and no dagger of dragonglass needed, like with Benjen and the Children of the Forest in the show. This would also explain why killing the White Walkers drops the wights around them, why they are a kind of nexus, although I certainly hope that the book has a more clever reveal than what we were given in the show. So with that said, I'm going to argue that this is the key, and that it hasn't been just any old sacrifice that's mattered to the White Walkers, but wargs specifically, due to both this soul and nature limbo and the inherent ability that they have to control others. So let's look for some evidence. In the legends, we know the children have had an alliance with warg kings, and that they were destroyed by the Starks. So we have at least one example of historical interest in human wargs. So what about another? Well, let's look no farther than the Night's King legend. If you are unfamiliar, he is the 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch and spies a woman with blue eyes and skin as white as the moon. He chases her and loves her, and brings her back to the Night's Watch. He controls his Night's Watch brothers with what's described as strange sorcery, and then it takes both the wildlings and the Starks to defeat and free the Night's Watch. According to legend, all records are erased of him. Strange sorcery sounds a lot like warging to me, as we have no other example of possession magic that I can think of. Let me know if there is. So the Night's King must have been a powerful warg or otherwise possessed by a powerful warg himself to be able to seize control of the Night's Watch. And you really only need to seize control of the Night's Watch leadership, but really we have no power limit to what a warg can do so far. Arya seems to be able to do so across the ocean, and if Vaimar can control multiple animals, who's to say if a powerful warg could not control several humans? So I think this is the reason that the Night King was targeted, and let me clarify by saying that I don't think that the Night's Queen is a White Walker. Let's remember that if she is, then the wall is secretly useless since she was brought across it, supposedly. But anyway, I really think that she is just a fresh white meant to lure the Night King specifically into a trap. I have a feeling that his legend is much more tragic than people give it credit for, so leave a comment if you want to see me get into that. I think it deserves a video of its own. So if the Night's King is targeted due to being a powerful warg or a vessel, he must have had something that the White Walkers wanted, and of course we are told that he was sacrificing to them. So if he was targeted for this reason, who else do we know that has made a deal? And that's likely the reason that Craster is special and can get away with not being attacked. We know what the White Walkers want from Craster. They want his sons, to the point where they pursue Gilly in both the book and the show. So he must be capable of producing a certain type of child that the White Walkers want. Otherwise they would just of course raid and take whoever, whenever. So here we have seemingly two examples of these sacrifice centers being set up, and indeed there are a ton of legends about the others take you, and on the surface we think that's to become a white, but there are also legends of the White Walkers feasting on human children or on breeding half-humans. There is this obsession with reproduction here, and so I like this double meaning to the others take you, that I doubt this deal with Craster was random. I think they're searching for some quality that they want. And thanks to Vaimar, we know that Craster does not necessarily have to be a warg to produce a warg, and just like the Night's King, who is either able or forced to sacrifice to the White Walkers, Craster seems all too happy to be a baby factory for them, and he's even willing to go a step farther, hence why he marries his daughters, despite that being an abomination. We see how Jon reacts to, marrying family. So this makes me wonder who Craster's father is, and of course we have no evidence. I just wonder if it's Bloodraven, because we know it's a Night's Watchman, but that's too much speculation for me. There's just no evidence to go on. And so maybe that was a mistake with the Night's King, that the goal was to either possess him or take control of the Night's Watch to quickly reproduce an army. And isn't it strange that the Night's Watch take no wives? We are given no real reason why they take this vow of celibacy. Wouldn't it make more sense to have families at the wall? And of course, if the Night's King was sacrificing to the others, where did the children come from? Even with desertion being punishable by death in the current timeline, we still know that people were fleeing from the Night's Watch in the introduction to A Game of Thrones. And I can imagine that recruiting to the Night's Watch would have become an issue at some point, just like we see with the War of the Five Kings. This king will cut off this road, or this side doesn't want to allow people to go and join the Night's Watch. I can imagine that this Stark or this Bolton isn't comfortable with a bunch of Stark or Bolton men getting to go free to the Night's Watch. So what if this vow has its roots in this White Walker obsession with reproduction and in preventing the White Walkers from obtaining a chief resource? We can't forget about the wildlings, of course, but they're sparsely populated north of the wall. There's no towns, there's no cities, and we also know that children have trouble as is. The wildlings don't even name their children until they know they will survive. But why take these kids when there are plenty of adult wargs around? Well, the answer is because they are easier to control than full-grown humans. A child probably can't fight back, and if you can kick the soul out the way you can with a dead warg who has gone into their animal for a second life, even better. That would also answer the reason of why the White Walkers take Craster's sheep as well. By the way, to have food, wool, milk, to keep the children alive long enough to serve their purpose. So let's wrap up this video. The White Walkers must have some differing set of powers to the Children of the Forest, but I would argue it's still a similar foundation since they are a creation of the Children of the Forest. I'd argue that these specific type of children must be key to something, either by the White Walkers driving out and controlling their spirit, maybe in the clouds and the snow like we've seen with Weimar when he passes away, and their spirit is unable to get back into their body because it's possessed by the White Walkers. Or maybe the White Walkers want them to boost their own warging power. Or maybe it's even just a human spirit that's trapped inside the White Walker while a child of the forest controls it. We'll never really know how the Whites are raised, but knowing that the children are capable of bringing back the dead on their own, I really like this shared body idea. It would help to explain a little of why a White has some remaining memory, but no ability to control it. Like we've seen with every other character that's returned from the dead. They all have some form of autonomy, even if their memory is fading, like with Beric. And we'll have to wait and see what's going on with Sir Robert Strong, who's also known as the Mountain, if he has any remaining control left over. It's interesting to think of what Qyburn is up to down there. So I think we have our answers to at least something that makes some sense as to how the Walkers operate and what they want. The Children of the Forest needed super soldiers to enforce the pact, and so they turned to their most powerful magic, necromancy, warging, and water magic. They used the human warg children to either boost their power as a specific type of sacrifice, or the key in how the White Walkers are made in order to weaponize the souls of the dead. We know the souls of the Children of the Forest and human wargs essentially live on in nature, so they could be directed into the souls of the dead. So why the White Walkers are back is my topic for the next video, and there's a lot more to get into here. How the Whites are raised on the other side of the wall is something I'm really curious about in the first book of Game of Thrones in Season 1. Why the White Walkers don't attack the wildlings at the wall, why they're just now coming back. So join me for that one. Hope to have that out in another week or two. And leave a comment on this video on what you think. I definitely want to hear your thoughts and get into the discussion there. And thank you for watching. If you're still watching this, definitely thank you for that. I'm thinking of streaming soon, maybe a blind Dark Souls 3 run. If you're interested in that, leave me a comment, as streaming is something I really want to do in the future. So thanks again for watching this all the way through, and I'll see you on the next one.